The Midwest supporting, bruiser loving, positivity spreading, world's most dangerous podcast. Join former pro wrestler and promoter Dave Dynasty as he supports and promotes Midwest pro wrestling. Keep on growing with the Midwest Express. This is the Dave Dynasty Show.
Greetings and welcome to the Dave Dynasty Show. I am your host, Dave Dynasty. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Thank you for joining us however you do, whether it be iTunes, SoundCloud, or YouTube, or any other podcast platform. We're available on them all. Thank you for being here. And of course, as always, any way that you do join us, please like, follow, comment, share, etc., etc. But thank you for sticking with us during our little unplanned hiatus. After sorting through equipment issues and laptop issues and microphone issues and some family trips and such that got in the way. Oh, it's been crazy, but we are back. Happy to be here. Happy to be back in the swing of things, supporting, exposing, and promoting Midwest professional wrestling. And we're glad you're along for the journey here on the Midwest Express, right? That's what we are. We are the Midwest Express. So let's start where we need to. Let's acknowledge the passing of Johnny Valentine, one of the greats of the business, certainly a key player in the history of Midwest professional wrestling. Everybody knows Johnny and Jimmy Valentine and their many tag team exploits. People remember Johnny V from the WWE. But Johnny and Jimmy are former WWA Tag Team Champions for Dick the Bruiser, and Johnny was a former WWA Heavyweight Champion. So certainly there's a lot of Midwest roots there for Johnny Valentine. We send out well wishes to his friends and family. And Godspeed, Mr. Valentine. Thank you for the memories. And then let's move on to something a little brighter. Whether you're a fan of the modern wrestling product or not, hopefully you can at least appreciate the grand nature of WrestleMania as an event. I know we don't talk a lot of WWE, and there's a Midwest tie to this. Stick with me. But again, I'm not a fan of a lot of the product. There are things I like, things I enjoy watching. But like I said, even if you're not a fan, you have to appreciate the grandness, the hugeness of the event itself. And there were three Indiana referees on WrestleMania. And of course, lots of other Midwest wrestlers throughout the weekend on all the shows. Ruby Riott is also from Indiana, was there. Of course, on the NXT show, Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa both have Midwest roots, along with many, many others. So that's just my 2 cents here about WrestleMania. I'm not here to say whether it was good, bad, indifferent. It's not whether it's good or bad. It's whether we enjoyed it or not. But I can appreciate and am very pleased and happy for all the Midwest talent involved with it. It's good to see those guys on that stage. Good to see those guys, reaching the pinnacle of this business, right? They have worked WrestleMania. That's exciting. And I'm very, very happy for the Midwest representation there. Proud of all those guys for carrying the flag, for carrying the banner of the Midwest on the biggest stage of them all. I feel like I'm on the network, plugging the product, but I'm not. We do have a great show for you here today. We've got Jayson Maples, owner of Heroes and Legends Wrestling. He's going to talk a little bit about his career and talk about Heroes and Legends and their upcoming event. We have a Whatever Happened To with Gator McAllistor, a guy I worked with long, long ago. Most of you will remember him from the Midwest, working around. We catch up with him, see what he's up to now, hear a few stories from his career. Very cool guy, real great talent, so it's good to catch up with him. We got a little segment coming up later with Chris Smith, the guy who is organizing and heading up the movement to get a statue erected in Milwaukee, Wisconsin for the Crusher. This is a movement we very, very much support, very, very much back. So we talked to Chris. He gives you all the details and all the background on that. Please go out and support that. All the information there in the show notes is the website, and you can also hear it in the upcoming clip. So please make sure you get that. Now, before we get into all that and kick over to referee Manbun for our usual first segment, I'm going to talk about a mission here on the Dave Dynasty Show, a mission of mine personally. You know, when I started this, and when we really, especially when we went to the Midwest only theme, I have a short list of guys that are like the holy grails that I would like to talk to and would like to interview. There's several guys, and I'm not going to divulge that list, and I'm actually, honest to goodness, there's a couple of them on that list that I'm working on and very close to having. But one of the names that is on that list and is really near the top is Scott Steiner. Was always a fan of Scott Steiner. Of course, he has Midwest roots, right? He's from Michigan, went to school in Michigan, started with the WWA Bruiser Battle for Dick the Bruiser, trained by Dr. Jerry Graham Jr. in Ohio, etc., etc. Everybody knows, right, about his starts. We've talked about it with Dr. Jerry Graham Jr. We talked about it on the show. And, of course, you know, Scott went on to do lots and lots of big things in the business. Was always a huge fan of Scott and Rex Attack Team. I think one of the best of all time. Really enjoy watching those guys, even now. Great stuff. But, of course, Scott is often remembered for some of his wild antics and the fact that, man, he doesn't have a filter, does he? He says whatever comes to mind and is not real good, let's be honest, with sometimes the free flow. Maybe things don't come out quite as he intended, or maybe they do. Whatever, maybe that's the beauty of it. So, anyway, like I said, he's near the list of guys that I've always wanted to interview. So I've started this thing called the Quest for Steiner, where I am on a drive, I'm on a mission to get an interview, no matter how long, short, whatever it may be, with Scott Steiner for the podcast. Now, the odds are slim to none that Scott's going to do this. We've already actually heard from somebody. I put the call out there for anybody going to New Orleans for WrestleMania and would attend WrestleCade, which Rick and Scott Steiner were at. Or WrestleCon, excuse me, not WrestleCade, WrestleCon. That if they put the bug in the ear, give me some contact info or whatever else. They actually spoke with Scott. Scott said he does not do podcasts for anybody he doesn't know. So it really kind of feels like we're dead in the water even as we start. But I'm not giving up the fight. I'm not giving up the quest just yet. We're going to keep plugging away. I did put the call out there to get contact information. Said I would send whoever gave it to me a Dave Dynasty Show shirt. Almost immediately got a response. I won't tell the gentleman's name, but he knows who he is. Got the response where I now am in possession of Scott Steiner's cell number. Pretty exciting. Kind of intimidating a little bit to think of this. So there is the potential here to make contact. I'm trying to brainstorm exactly how to approach this, how to get into it, and figure out just how the hell you cold call Scott Steiner for something like this. One thing's for sure, I think whenever and however we do it or whatever we do, I think the tape's got to be rolling, right? We got to be recording that because it may be entertaining in its own right. So anyway, but we're going to drag this out and play it out for a few weeks. And the Quest for Steiner, we're going to talk about Scott and talk about how this mission is progressing. We got some things planned. Should be fun. Should be entertaining. Maybe it won't be. Who knows? We're going to see. But part of this quest and part of this exposure here on the podcast for this mission is that we are going to revisit some classic Scott Steiner audio. This stuff's great. All of it is great. It is funny. It is entertaining. Very memorable. There are some old promos, a few at least, from him in the WWE. We're not going to go to the you know what? We're going to dive into the crazy, wild, over-the-top, big Papa Pump type stuff, right? And there's only one place we can start. And we've got that audio right now we're going to give to you. This is Scott Steiner talking math, right? Everybody knows this promo. Everybody's heard this promo. This is Scott Steiner's math. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to give you that clip. Listen to some classic audio from Scott Steiner explaining his chances of winning and his opponent's chances of winning in a mathematical sort of roundabout way. I don't know. You tell me. But we got that audio for you, and then we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back with official decision with referee Manbun. So here we go. Is everybody ready? Scott Steiner with a little math lesson for you.
You know, they say all men are created equal, but you look at me and you look at Small Joe, and you can see that statement is not true. See, normally if you go one-on-one with another wrestler, you got a 50-50 chance of winning. But I'm a genetic freak, and I'm not normal. So you got a 25% at best at beating me. And then you add Kurt Angle to the mix, your chances of winning drastically go down. See, the three-way at sacrifice, you got a 33 and a third chance of winning. But I got a 66 and two-thirds chance of winning because Kurt Angle knows he can't beat me, and he's not even going to try. So, Samoa Joe, you take your 33 and a third chance minus my 25% chance, and you got an 8 and a third chance of winning at sacrifice. But then you take my 75% chance of winning if we used to go one-on-one and then add 66 and two-thirds percent. I got 141 and two-thirds chance of winning at sacrifice. See, Joe, the numbers don't lie, and they spell disaster for you at sacrifice. 1, 2, 3.
Here's my man bun.
What's good, beautiful people? This is referee Sean O'Brien, also known as referee Manbun, back with another edition of Official's Decision. This past week, I was a little bit under the weather, but luckily for me, IWA had a shortened schedule this past week. So we only ran one show due to the NCAA tournament. Yes, basketball is that big of a deal in this area. So we had cut back a little bit this week. I did also work a couple of shows. I had one show for Grindhouse Pro Wrestling School. And then I also had a show with Girl Fight Professional Wrestling. Both are great companies. And I definitely recommend looking both of them up on Facebook. Grindhouse is a great school here in the Kentuckiana area, ran by Rudy Switchblade and Too Tough Tony. And then Girl Fight is an awesome all-female promotion ran by Madman Pondo. Please go check those promotions out. They're doing some cool things and trying to get their name out there a little bit more. So help them out and give them a follow. This week on the show, since I didn't have a whole lot of shows and I didn't really have a whole lot to talk about, I'm going to do things just a little bit differently. I'm going to talk about an important topic in professional wrestling, something that comes up quite often and actually got brought up recently on a podcast that I listened to. Shout out to the Road Home from Wrestling. It came up on their podcast. It came up during an IWA event recently. It also came up during one of the biggest matches of last year, Kenny Omega and Chris Jericho. So this is definitely an important topic, and I would love to discuss it with you guys, and I would love to hear some of your opinions. Definitely let me know what you think. Hit me up on social media. Hit up Dave Dynasty on social media. The topic that we are going to be talking about today are rope breaks. That's right, folks. It's a lot more important than you think. Rope breaks. Before we dive into the topic a little bit more, let's first ask ourselves, what exactly is a rope break? The ropes in a professional wrestling ring are technically, I guess you could call them the out of bounds area in a pro wrestling ring. Once you go on the outside of the ropes, the match is no longer valid. Technically, a referee is supposed to start counting on the outside of the ropes to get the wrestlers back in the ring. And also during a regular match, you can only pin or submit your opponent in the middle of the ring within the 4 or 6 ropes, depending on what kind of ring you have. So that kind of gives you a little bit of information as far as what the ropes are there for. They're not just to run and bounce off of and get more momentum to hit your opponent. They are there as an out of bounds signifier. Technically, the ropes help to keep the wrestlers in the ring and keep the action in the ring. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, and I'm sure you're asking, now, what if it's a no disqualification stipulation? What does that mean for the rope breaks? Here's the deal. In a no disqualification match, technically, as far as pins go, a pin is invalid if it's in the ropes. Because the thing is you have to pin your opponent in the ring. The only time that really rope breaks do not matter whatsoever is during a false count anywhere match. If the rules are false count anywhere, obviously you could pin your opponent anywhere, and the ropes have no meaning whatsoever. However, in a no DQ match, you can pin your opponent. You have to pin your opponent in the ring still. So if you pin your opponent near the rope and they grab a rope, the pin is invalid and it doesn't count. However, if you have your opponent in a submission move and they happen to grab the ropes during a no disqualification, here's the kicker. You don't technically have to let it go. The referee obviously can't disqualify you for having or for not letting the submission go because the rules is no disqualification. However, you cannot win the match in the ropes. You can't win the match by being assisted by the ropes. Therefore, if you want to win the match and if you want your opponent to tap out, then you have to pull your opponent away from the ropes to the center of the ring and tap them out there. If you watch the Chris Jericho Kenny Omega match, it told this whole entire situation great. If you're able to go back and watch it. And if you ever watch me in the ring, I normally will try and inform the wrestlers, hey, you can't do that, or you can do that, or whichever way. So yeah, that's basically in a gist the rope breaks rules as far as that goes. So if anybody has any more questions, please hit me up, let me know, and I will be glad to answer them. Quick review real quick. Rope breaks in a regular match. If you try to submit your opponent and they grab the ropes, you have to break it. If you have your opponent in a pin, they have to break it. Regular match. And if they don't, then they're disqualified. During a no disqualification match, however, if you have your opponent in a pin, you cannot pin your opponent while they're grabbing the rope. Because, like we said before, you have to put them in the middle of the ring. However, in a submission, anything goes. I mean, they can keep on and you could be tapping out. But of course, if you tap, it doesn't count. They have to submit you in the middle of the ring away from the ropes. So that's the rope break rule. Hopefully, you guys have a little bit more clarification. Up next for me, on Thursday, April 5th, IWA Mid-South returns to Powerbomb.tv. Come on out to the IWA Arena to watch live, or if you can't make it, log on to Powerbomb.tv. And if you don't have an account yet, you can watch this particular show for free by signing up now and using code IWAMS for 20 days for free. So definitely take advantage of that. Hopefully we either see you at a show, or see you at the show on Thursday, or also see you on Powerbomb. And real quick, I just want to shout out a few companies that I'm going to be making my debut at in April. Shout out to Vicious Outcast Wrestling, Strong Style Wrestling, Revolution Championship Wrestling. All three of those companies I will be making my debut at in April. Looking forward to that. Please follow me for all information and for where you can find me at official SPO502. I have t-shirts, referee Manbun shirts. I also list where I'm going to be at all the time. So hope to see you guys at a show. Shout out to Dave Dynasty. Always appreciate him. And like I said, hope to see you guys at a show.
You've heard him here on the Dave Dynasty Show as a guest and as host of the monthly Graham's Gallery episodes. And now you can hear his stories. You can own a copy of Confessions of a Big-Time Wrestler, the audio book from Dr. Jerry Graham Jr., former multi-tag team champion in WWA and owner of Bruiser Bedlam. You can hear all of his encounters with the various wrestlers, places, and promotions he's worked as he tells about his colorful, long, and illustrious career. You can have your own copy for only $25, and that includes shipping and handling. It's very simple. Go on Facebook, look up Jerry Jaffe, Jaffe, send him a private message, and make arrangements to purchase a copy of Confessions of a Big-Time Wrestler now. You will not regret this purchase.
And welcome back to the Dave Dynasty Show. I am your co-host, Ike Isaacs, and today we are joined with yet again one of our most wonderful of human beings, someone I think you guys are going to love, Jayson Maples. How are we doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for asking, and thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, no, not a problem at all. Thank you for accepting. You know, our show is only as good as our interviews, so we are truly grateful to have anybody on the show, especially someone of your caliber. I definitely feel like we're going to get some great stories out of you today, so everybody put on your party hats. We're going to get this rocking.
Right on.
All right, well, first question as always, where are you from, Jayson?
I am from the huge metropolis city of Marion, Indiana.
Right on. I've been to Marion, so metropolitan city. That is a wonder. That is a hell of a description.
Yeah, you know, it's a little bit bigger than the town. If you go through it and blink, you'll miss it. But
right,
you know, I mean, it's home. I mean, it's where I'm from.
That's right. Hey,
so I claim it.
That's absolutely right. Hey, I'm from Columbus, Indiana, and for people who are from Columbus, Columbus is just a blip on the radar, if you will. So I'm a small town human being as well. But
sure,
absolutely. So then you're just like, oh yeah, the place with all the corn. Oh yeah.
Right.
But right on. So then, what was it like growing up in Marion? Did you play any sports?
Yeah, man, I did soccer and flag football and t-ball and baseball and softball, and I was on the wrestling team and played football. I was actually on the track team, but I didn't run. I just did the shot put.
No, absolutely.
Played a little bit of golf. I tried to do all the sports.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it seems like you're kind of everywhere. I mean, you had to have a pretty good repertoire with sports.
Indeed.
That's absolutely not a bad thing, especially when you can merge into a profession such as wrestling. I bet that really helped you out a lot. But speaking of, you said you're on the wrestling team. You had all these sports background. Did you have any wrestling background before you actually started doing training?
Yeah, I mean, I wrestled my sophomore and my junior year in high school. Wasn't the greatest, but I didn't do too bad.
No, absolutely. So then, how about the professional side of wrestling? Did you ever watch that as you were younger? Did you ever get predisposed to that, or did you just one day see wrestling and say, that's what I want to do?
No, for sure. I watched it back in the 80s. I mean, I'm dating myself, but I graduated my senior year. It was 1988. And, I watched, the WrestleManias, and the Royal Rumble was always my favorite, pay-per-view. I can remember though, the first Royal Rumbles I was watching, I decided to be a bit of a hustler and, did like a thing around school, like $5 a pick. You guess who's going to win the Royal Rumble? And, we split the pot 50-50. So I was kind of being a bit of a hustler back as a 17-year-old in high school. And my favorites are always, Andre and Hogan and Macho Man. I liked wrestling, growing up.
No, absolutely. And it was definitely a good time, I think, to grow up with wrestling. Like you said, you had Macho Man, you had the Hulk Hogans and the Andre the Giants. But when was it that you knew that wrestling was like something you wanted to do? It stopped being just something you saw on TV, but something you saw yourself doing?
Right out of high school, I became a stand-up comedian and traveled around the country and ended up down in the Carolinas. And, one of the shows that I did, a group of people in the audience were professional wrestlers. And after the show, we just got to, talking and hitting it off. And they gave me a business card for Ivan Koloff and said that I should give him a call. And it was actually some time after that, but I thought, man, that would kind of be cool, and I gave him a call, and that kind of just started everything.
Absolutely. So obviously you're trained by Ivan Koloff, as you already mentioned. What was that like?
Man, he was hard on guys. God bless him. He was an amazing human being, and Not only was he, you know, my brother in wrestling, but my brother in Christ, man. And he was so awesome, but he was so hard on the guys when they first started. And I think it was maybe the fourth or fifth practice before I even got to get in the ring. I mean, we were doing push-ups and sit-ups and cardio drills, and just, I think he was trying to weed out the guys that really had the heart, you know, and get rid of the guys that, you know, I don't, for what reason they would be there other than that. But, he was just really hard on the guys. And then I guess when he saw that, you know, you had something, or that you weren't going to give up, or that you weren't going to go outside and puke in a ditch, you know, he would go ahead and let you start getting in the ring and learning the ropes.
No, absolutely. And that's actually something I've heard a lot. That, you know, when you trained, you know, obviously getting trained is a lot different now than it was back then. But that's how a lot of people said, you know, definitely the we'll call it the weak ones got, you know, they definitely got picked out before they really got into it. So I've definitely heard that from a lot of people getting trained in that era.
Oh, for sure. You know, what's crazy is nowadays it seems like the same guys you see in the first and second row, you know, not if you run like all the time, but let's say you're doing a loop and you're in the same place maybe once every couple months. It seems like the guys that are in the first and second row are now, you know, they're in the locker room. It just seems so easy anymore for guys to get in the business. It's a little disheartening, actually. The long time that we had ran Body Slam University, I tried to implement the things that, you know, I was taught by Ivan Koloff, and certainly we didn't just let anybody come through. And, you know, the last several years, myself and Congo Kong was actually my head trainer, and we certainly, you know, didn't beat the guys up or anything, but we certainly weren't real easy on them, and they had to earn a spot in the class. Cause it's just, oh, I don't know, man. I think anymore, some of these training schools, they call themselves that. They just want to take the guys' money and run them through the school and then send them on their way. And, you know, we were just never like that.
No, absolutely. That's another thing I've heard that, you know, pretty common these days. You know, it's just get them in and get them out and get their money.
Right. Unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, definitely. I wish we could go back to the old days, right?
Yeah, the only thing worse than that, man, is when the guys come in and they start training, then they think they know it all, then they start wrestling, then they think they know it all, then they start trying to promote shows. And, oh, my God.
Then you just have a catastrophe waiting to happen right there.
Oh, there's a lot of them that are great, a lot of them not so great, a lot of them horrible, and some are just one and done and they realize it was too hard. But, you know, I think we're up to about 40 promotions just in Indiana. I may be over guessing, man, but it drives me a little nuts sometimes.
You know, you say you're over guessing, but honestly, I saw someone I was talking to, they kind of had the same thing. They're like, you know, anybody puts on, you know, clothes in the morning, they're like, yeah, I'm a promoter. You know, not anybody can just promote. And they're actually talking about how there are so many people in Indiana who have promotions. And I mean, I can think of at least 15 off the top of my head. So you're probably not too far off, which is not a good thing. But we'll probably touch on that a little bit later. But what was your first match like? You know, definitely, I always like to ask people that, because most of the time they're like, oh yeah, I remember my match, and then they say it was not good, or
no, it was horrible. In fact, I'd only had 2 actual training sessions under my belt, and went to a show, kind of like tagged along, rode along, you know, with some of the other guys. And I remember it was in Newport News. I want to say Virginia, but it might have been West Virginia. I don't remember. I know it was a Virginia. So wherever Newport News is at. And just in this little bingo hall or banquet facility building. And I go in, and I didn't go planning to wrestle. I just went to go hang out, but they were short some guys, and the guys that I rode with had already told the promoter that I was a wrestler. And so he come up, he's like, do you want to work tonight? And I'm shaking my head no. And he's like, oh, come on, man. I'll put you on something real easy. And, I figured, what's the worst that could happen? So ended up, man, I wrestled this veteran of the sport, Cowboy Bob Ellis. And we ended up being like semi-main. And when Ellis had come up to me, he's like, how long you been working, kid? And I told him, I fabricated a story, man. I was stupid. And I told him I'd been doing it for a while. And long story short, man, we get in the ring and went to lock up, and I screwed that up. And he just grabbed a hold of me and he took liberties with me, and rightfully so, man. And it was horrible. Looking back on it now, obviously I had no business doing that. It was a learning experience. And I mean, I didn't even know who Ellis was, but I now know, I mean, he was very famous back in the day, and, he didn't deserve what I took in there, man, because I was super green and it was horrible. And, so my first match, was not one that I fondly remember.
No, absolutely. I very rarely talk to someone who I think actually fondly remembers their first match, for a number of reasons.
Sure.
So then you kind of worked under a couple different names, obviously. I always do my homework on people, but if I'm not mistaken, one of your first gimmicks was Blaze Bigelow. Is that right?
Yeah, sure, man. I got to hanging with Bam Bigelow and worked some shows with him, and had brought him into Marion on a fundraiser. And we were sitting there signing autographs, and someone just kind of spouted off, man, you guys look like twins. And Scotty looked at him and said, yeah, man, he's my brother from another mother. And we just thought it might hit off. I mean, I didn't have the tattoos on my head, but it worked. And several promoters started booking us as brothers, and it was a good time. And I had fun with it.
No, absolutely. I would too, I think. Getting to work with Bam Bigelow. I mean, he's definitely one of those guys, you look back and he had a lot to do in the business, and he did a lot, and he was fantastic. So I bet that was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it was amazing. I tried one of the funny things, I tried a cartwheel one night and failed miserably and landed on my head. And he never let me forget that, man. He always told me that I had no business trying. I was going to break my neck, that the cartwheel was his. Good stuff, man. He was such a good dude.
Absolutely. I've watched different things, and I've heard nothing but good things about him. Obviously, if you hit him the wrong way, I feel like that probably, put him in a bad mood, but he seemed like a really cool guy. And hopefully we get to hear a little bit more about him today.
Sure.
Absolutely. But then before we get too far on talking about your with you and Bam Bam, were there any other gimmicks that you worked under as in your career?
Oh, when I very first started, I lived in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and I kind of did a beach bum gimmick and called myself the Sandman, and that was long before I knew anything about hack. And God, that was really silly. I wore clam digger swimming trunk type shorts to the ring and a tank top, and I actually had hair then. Just did like a surfer beach bum kind of gimmick. It wasn't that great. And then I was Jason Lee, which was just my first and my middle name, and did the Hurricane, which, then I did Blaze Bigelow after that, and then I went back to the Hurricane. And then, of course, Shane Helm started doing the Hurricane, so I did Jayson the Hurricane Maples just so there was a little bit less confusion, but I'd been using Hurricane for so many years, I really just wasn't going to drop it.
No, absolutely. Rightfully so, I think.
Right.
So then, let's get a little more deeper into the, how you and, obviously we know how you and Bam Bam met. But what was it? What was it about your relationship with Bam Bam? What did he kind of mean for your career and your life?
Well, at that point, I had already I lucked into getting some first a tryout and then a few weekend swings with the WWF then. So I'd already had some experience. I feel like I got that too quick, too soon. It was all a bit fast for me. I'd probably only been out of wrestling school for a few months, and I got a call to go up on a 3-day swing for WWF. And Bam Bam had already been and gone and hadn't come back yet at that point, but ended up running into him on some independent shows. That's how I met him, and he was cool. And I think it started out, I just picked him up at the airport for a show, and then we rode around and did some shows together. And I was the guy that was just driving Bam Bam. But then when I brought him in, we kind of hit it off, and then that people said I looked like him, and he was cool, man. And he helped me get some bookings, and of course I helped him get some stuff. But he ended up being, we played like we were brothers, but honestly, man, he was just as close to me as, my real brothers. Not in the sense that, it wasn't like real family, but it was just as close as any wrestling brothers would ever be, man. He was just such a fantastic guy, give you the shirt off his back. He was just, I don't know, man, I could never say too many great things about him. He was just an amazing human being, and I am blessed and a better person having known him.
No, absolutely. And that's when you have a real relationship with someone, is that they basically enhance your quality of life, and that definitely sings true here in this situation. So I'm sure that you were probably pretty downtrodden, as many of us were when Bam Bam did pass away. But what was your reaction when you had heard that?
I didn't want to believe it. I cried pretty terribly for days. I hated it. I think it was probably a couple years before I even took his phone numbers out of my phone, just because I wanted to keep him in there. I knew that I could never call it and he would answer, but it was just one of those things like, and I've still got phone numbers in my phone now for people who are no longer with us, and I just haven't taken them out for whatever X, Y, or Z reason. But it was a long time before I brought myself to even just take his phone number out of my phone, because that was kind of like letting go. And I don't know, man,
No.
I wish he was still with us.
Absolutely. No, I agree. But, I guess on a more happier note, one of your other many ventures, obviously, you obviously have an incredible repertoire. You've done quite a bit, and you even did venture into promoting. You ran the EWF for many years. But how was the decision made to start doing promoting as well as wrestling?
Well, I feel like I was a good wrestler. I won't say great. I was a good wrestler. I thought as a babyface, I could get him going. As a heel, I could get him to hate me. I thought I was a good wrestler. I'd never thought I was a top wrestler. I never, not that I didn't have faith in myself, but I was a big guy. I never thought I was that great. Some of the fans thought I was, and God love them for that. But I'd go to these shows and, I'd make a little bit of money. And I'd do okay at the gimmick table. And some of the shows I just saw where the promoter, not all of them, but a lot of them were making some good loot. And, they were hustling the snack bar and hustling the tickets and the merch. And I just got to thinking, man, I think I could do that. And I tried. And I think I failed a couple. But it got easier. And, EWF, was a mainstay in Indiana. I mean, we, for 13 and a half years, it was every Saturday night. Tons of Wednesdays also. We did like free Wednesday night shows. And I mean, there was tons of shows, man. And tons of guys came through the locker room, and I've been blessed to make friends and acquaintances and a few enemies with tons and tons of professional wrestling talent. And I loved doing the promoting, and the EWF was certainly my stomping ground and where I got, most of my notoriety from. And the joy I got from promoting far outweighed actually the wrestling part of it, I think. I don't know, man. Not to say I would never wrestle again. Currently I can't because I've got a blown out knee, but at some point I'll probably have at least one more match. I've got a 20-month-old baby now, and I think when he's old enough to understand, I'd probably like to do at least one more just so he can see Dad, wrestle. But long story short, so I saw other promoters doing it, and I thought not only could I do it, but I thought I could do it better. And I did my first show April of 1994, and here we are in 2018, and we're still going. So I mean, not EWF anymore, but
Absolutely. And obviously, like you said, you ran it for a long time, and obviously you're still doing the promoting gig. But what would you say is probably one of your favorite memories of the EWF?
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. The very first venue. Well, no. So man, we ran some little terrible buildings, and we had like a bowling alley, and then we got into this building called the Raintree Plaza down in Marion, and had like a little side building off of the movie theater. Could only probably hold 100 people, and it was very tight. And we booked Superfly, Jimmy Snuka in there, and I was just going to have him appear and sign autographs, and he was like, brother, you let Superfly wrestle, man. And so I'm like, all right. And I didn't know who I was going to have him wrestle. And so I wrestled him. And I thought it was pretty cool. And so we ended up doing a three-way dance, me and Jimmy and this guy named Bob, the real deal Bob. And so it was a three-way, and Bob had done something at the end of the match and ends up throwing me on a table, and then Snuka climbs up to the top rope and gives the little I love you signals up in the air, and dove off. And so that's the moment. So I'm laying there on the table, and here's Superfly Jimmy Snuka flying off the top rope pretty gracefully and smashed me through a table. I think that was it. And I mean, there was probably 120 people in there, tight, elbow to elbow, and it was just cool, man. And to hear the fans cheering for Jimmy, obviously not me, but it was kind of a cool moment because he was one of those guys that I'd looked up to, and another amazing human being. At least, all my experiences with him were fantastic. And so that, I think, was pretty swell. I mean, there's been many moments, man. That one just stuck out to me when you said that. But I think then the first shows we did in the movie theater down in Marion were pretty spectacular. I mean, I don't know, man. If I thought about it, I could probably pop off several more cool moments. But the Jimmy Snuka one was really cool, man. We had some good guests down there, had a ton of shows, made a lot of friends. A lot of the fans from down there still, come up to the Heroes and Legends shows. And Oh, I don't know, man. I've had some people, last April, we had, the event up here, Ric Flair, and I had some fans that came from Tennessee who had been to EWF shows, years and years earlier. And this guy comes up and he says, "Hey man, I don't know if you remember me, but we used to come to your shows in Marion." And he introduces me to this other fella who was probably in his mid to late 20s. And, they actually had a Polaroid photo. That dates it right there too, but they had a Polaroid picture, of me and the dad and this other guy who was a little kid, and they were in their old EWF shirts in the ring. And I guess I posed for Polaroids one night. And so he had brought that Polaroid picture back for me to sign it. And, that was a cool moment.
Absolutely.
Just to know that guy was a fan as a little kid and still kept that picture all these years.
Absolutely. And hey, there's nothing wrong with Polaroids. Polaroids, they're fucking.
Man, that used to be great. That used to be the great way to make money, and they'd take that picture and it's right there handy. I mean, we're getting $10 a shot, a 10-pack of film, that's $100 a cartridge. That was a good gimmick back in the day.
I mean, I feel like you could probably still get away with it now with all the people love the old stuff. They love like hipsters. They love like the Polaroids. I feel like you could still get away with that these days.
I don't. I still have 2 old Polaroid cameras, but I don't think you can get the film for it anymore. I believe they stopped making it. I could be wrong, but I don't think they still make it.
You're right. There are still specialty places like online that you can order from. I'm sure it's super expensive though.
Yeah. It probably wouldn't be worth it.
No, probably not. I'm selling it like $20 a pop, so probably not. But so I mean, again, like that, just that memory. Obviously, that's something. I mean, not everybody can say that they were slammed through a table by the Superfly.
Right.
But you've already kind of mentioned, so I just kind of want to transition into that. But let's talk about Heroes and Legends. For people who don't know, Guy, if you will, just give them a brief synopsis and tell them how you started it, when you decided to start it.
Well, I was actually getting really burned out on the every Saturday night thing. Like I mentioned, we did it for just a little over 13 years every week. And it was getting kind of monotonous, kind of crazy. I was getting not really bored with it, but just my life was kind of, I don't know, man. It was getting boring to me, and I was getting burned out, and I was just going to quit running altogether. So I had already made some plans to close the EWF arena, and I was going to move down to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and just kind of chill in the mountains, man, to be honest. And then the last 5 or 6 EWF shows were pretty good, and I was like, man, I don't want to give this up, but maybe I'm just not going to run so often. And so I stayed up here and I just ran a few, and then got out to the East Coast and saw some of these conventions that they were running. And I thought, if I decided to do it like that, and I wasn't going to run it every, week, not every month, maybe every few months or just a couple times a year, then I wouldn't get so bored with it and I wouldn't get burned out on it. And so I decided, December of 2012 that, we were going to run our last show, and we did. And I believe that was in Bluffton, Indiana. And, Drew Skills, ended as the heavyweight champion. And then, we brought out the, Heroes and Legend title and just said the EWF was done. That's the way we were going to go out, and just traded belts with Drew, and he became the first ever Heroes and Legends champ. And then we did our first show in, April of 2013 up here in Fort Wayne with the Heroes and Legends show. That's when we had Bret Hart and DiBiase and Jimmy Snuka, Demolition. We had a pretty loaded up event. It was pretty amazing.
No, absolutely. So definitely, that's a really unique, twist on professional wrestling. Is not something you see that often. So it's obviously super unique. So with that, though, if I'm not mistaken, you have an event coming up soon. So if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, we are now from the one in 2013. We're now at number 10. So it's Heroes and Legends 10, which is on Saturday, April the 21st, and we have gone from the many years ago in the EWF, we had a little bowling alley and a little room off of a movie theater. We're now playing the Allen County War Memorial Coliseum up here in Fort Wayne. Again, that's Saturday, April 21st, Heroes and Legends 10. The convention part of it is from noon until 6. Bell time is 7. Obviously, it's heroesandlegendswrestling.com. Tickets are available at any Ticketmaster outlet. You can order tickets by phone through Ticketmaster.com, or you can just come up here to the Coliseum in Fort Wayne and go to the box office. We got a pretty loaded event. Our heavyweight champion, Congo Kong, will defend his title against Tatanka. We've got Nick Cutler taking on James Ellsworth. We got Sugar Dunkerton. We got Sammy Callahan, OVE, Coco Beware just added, as well as Mean Gene Okerlund just added, Vita Scott, Terry Runnels, Dylan Bostic. We've got the Reverend Slick, Marty Jannetty, Greg Valentine, One Man Gang, Cowboy Bob Orton, Tito Santana, and tons of other indie talent and vendors will be coming out. Not just a biased opinion, but I think it's an amazing event, and I hope that the fans come out. I shake hands with everybody on the way out. I'd love to meet everybody.
Well, absolutely. Well, you guys have heard it right here. Only other thing is where can they follow you on social media? Is there like a social media for Heroes and Legends as well?
Yeah, man, they can follow us. It's hashtag or the @ however. I'm not sure how they find it on there. I'm not super savvy with it. But on Twitter, we're Heroes, and it's HEROES, and then AN Legends. So Heroes and Legends. There's no D in the and. And then on Facebook, it's Heroes and Legends Professional Wrestling, or Heroes and Legends X. We'll find the event page. Instagram is Heroes and Legends. I think there's another one. I don't remember. If they just tend to Google Heroes and Legends Professional Wrestling, all of our social media will pop up, and surely give us a follow, and we'll follow you back, and we'll retweet your stuff. And we like social media.
No, absolutely. Social media is one of the best free advertisement platforms of all time.
Indeed. I mean, we still do it the old-fashioned way, man. We pound the pavement. We hang flyers. We, put posters out and, pizza box tops, and, we get the word out everywhere. But social media definitely is a great avenue.
Absolutely. That's, you guys have heard it. I mean, this show is going to be packed. I mean, the convention is going to be packed. It's going to be incredible. Definitely try and make it out there.
Who else is going to be here? You remember back in the day, the news reporter that asked the wrestler, is wrestling fake? Dr. David Schultz, and Schultz beat this news reporter with an inch of his life. David Schultz is going to be here. I didn't know if you knew that, but he's got a new book out, and he'll be at the Coliseum with us, signing copies of his book. It just struck me that I forgot to mention that David Schultz was going to be here, which is I don't think he does very many anything really.
No, it's weird. I actually have a very vague recollection of that, and that alone makes me want to go. Oddly enough.
Yeah, it's going to be cool, and I dare anybody to ask him if wrestling's fake, man.
We're gonna have EMTs on standby. Don't worry. No.
Actually, let me disclaimer that right now. I am not actually asking anyone to ask him if it's fake. Please don't.
Please don't.
Yeah, I'm sure his answer would be different. He's not going to come across the table at you. However, just don't.
It's like if you see a sleeping bear, just because you're pretty sure it's not going to wake up, there's still no
Right.
reason to poke it with a stick. You know what I mean? So,
Exactly.
so I guess a way kind of just to wind down, kind of gets a little more information about you. I mean, you have this incredible, event. You have a pretty incredible projection of the future right now. But with the rest of 2018 remaining and moving forward, do you have any goals for Heroes and Legends or goals for yourself?
Oh, let me tell you something, brother. We're trying to do things bigger and better every show. We're already making plans for number 11. We've got some fair shows that we've booked. We're going back over to Ohio, August 31st for Heroes and Legends on the Road. We've got a couple other things in the works. We've got a Heroes and Legends book coming out. We got Heroes and Legends fidget spinners, if you would imagine that. Not that that's a great thing, but I'm sitting here looking at them. We got and certainly just go to the website heroesandlegendswrestling.com. Check us out on all the other social. Come out and see the show. Come out and tell your friends and family with you, and we're just gonna have a good time, and we're gonna make some cool announcements on April 1st. They're gonna be really spectacular. We try to the only thing we try to do is be better than the last show. People say the only person I want to be is better than the person I was yesterday, and that's kind of what we do, man. We just want every show to just be a little bit better than the last one.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you guys have heard it here. You've heard, a snippet of who all is going to be there. There's going to be plenty more people, plenty more talent. So if you don't go, honestly, you're really you're missing out, honestly. Go to their website, go follow their social medias. And like you said, April 21st is going to come a big announcement. You don't want to miss that. I don't know what it is, so I'm going to have to keep an eye out for it too. So, keep an eye out for it, keep an eye out on this. You're not going to want to sleep on this promotion, this convention, this event, or happening, if you will. But Mr. Maples, I want to thank you so much for coming on here, talking to us, giving us a time, talking about your life, career, and your future.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And it's also a celebration because the day before is my birthday. So April 20th is my birthday. April 21st is the event. So I think I'm going to have some cake there too. So we're just we're going to have a big party, man.
There you go. It's not just about wrestling. It's about celebrating the birth of the creator, if you will.
There you go, man.
Right on.
Whatever happened to you?
And we're back with Whatever Happened To, the segment where we catch up on some often overlooked names from Midwest wrestling's past. I am Mike Isaacs, and today we're chatting with Gator McAllistor. How are we doing today?
Pretty good, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, doing wonderful, living the dream. It stopped raining yet again where I'm living, so hey, I can't complain. I don't like the rain. But
There you go.
Well, we'll go ahead and jump right into it. Besides the rain, tell us how you got started in wrestling, Gator.
Well, I was always a fan of the business, being a small kid. I grew up in a small town in Kentucky. So the only wrestling that we had was the Memphis territory. I was probably a teenager before I ever seen a WWF program. So grew up watching Jerry Lawler, Bill Dundee, Dutch Mantell, all those guys, The closest town to me where I could actually go and watch wrestling was Evansville, Indiana.
Okay.
And they ran a weekly show. So we used to go up to Evansville as a kid, watch the wrestling and all that stuff. And bought a program one night when I was 15 years old. Had an ad in it that said, hey, have you ever thought about doing this? Send your picture with a self-addressed stamped envelope, blah, 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 to an address. So I send all the information in, get a letter back telling me to be in Nashville, Tennessee at the fairgrounds on a Monday morning So I show up, and there's about 10 other guys there. And a little red car pulls up, and Dirty Dutch Mantell gets out. And, I mean, of course, I was starstruck, you know. Never really met anybody in the business. And Dutch comes over, shakes all of our hands, and commences to running us like we were dogs. He was like, okay, guys, run until I'm tired. And he stood there talking with people while we were all running until we were following. That's about how I got into the business.
You know, I've actually heard stories about Dutch Mantell, and I mean that pretty much matches everything I've ever heard. Everything I've ever heard.
Yeah. I mean, he's such a phenomenal guy. He's probably one of the most intelligent people I've ever met in my life. Really, really knows wrestling, knows the history, the ups, the downs, everything, and has some of the most amazing road stories I've ever heard.
Absolutely. And definitely, that's another thing I've heard, is that he has stories upon stories upon stories that never ends.
Absolutely. I mean, he can tell you stuff that can make your hair stand on end, but he can also tell you stuff that just makes you laugh until you wet your pants, you know. Like I say, just all-around good guy. You know, I've heard people say bad things about him. I personally couldn't. Dutch has never done anything but teach me what I needed to know, and been great to me. Like I say, just all-around great guy. I think he deserves a place in the Hall of Fame, and I'm sure that one day Hunter and Vince will.
Absolutely. That's another thing, too. It's like, I feel like, kind of a side note, I feel like there are a lot of Midwest guys that don't get the credit they deserve for their spot in creating what wrestling is today. That's a little side
exactly
there. But
yeah, exactly. I mean, if you look at the areas that, just take Dutch for instance, the highest ratings that Puerto Rico has ever done in history is when Dutch was the booker. The highest ratings that Memphis ever did is when Dutch was the booker. The highest ratings TNA ever did is when Dutch was the booker. So, I mean, that just goes without saying. The guy obviously knows what he's doing and deserves and noticed for all of his accomplishments.
Absolutely. But, so yeah, absolutely. So definitely that was kind of, I mean, I guess you could say it was a rough start, but it was an abrupt start to your wrestling career. Like you said, you're kind of always a fan, but you got into it. But what was your first match? Obviously, everyone has that first match story. Do you know you remember what your first match was?
Yep. My very first match took place October the 11th, 1988 in Bowling Green. It was against a guy that, he was an old Memphis guy. His gimmick was the Mongolian Kokala Khan. I think when he was in Memphis, he was the Green Shadow or something like that, or a mask and a bodysuit and stuff. Badass guy. I mean, he could fight, and he didn't take anything from anybody. But for some reason, he took a liking to me, and he took care of me. You know, he didn't beat me up too bad. I think I left out of there with a concussion. Pretty much it. But it was definitely an experience. I was a nervous wreck. Didn't know that I was going to be wrestling. I was actually just trying to pay my dues, going to the shows, setting up rings, working the security guard and stuff. Somebody didn't show up. They come to me and said, "Hey, kid, get your boots on, you're working." And I was like, "Oh, okay, sure, why not?" So I'm a nervous wreck. My music hits. I go running out to the ring. And, of course, the show was one of Dale TNT Mann's shows. He didn't have a regular canvas. He had the vinyl type mat that went over the ring. So the match before, the guys were wet, sweating. So I jump on the ring, hit a wet spot, and fall and bust my ass, you know, in front of everybody. Very first match, and embarrassed me pretty good. That was almost hung up the beach right then and there. But I thought, well, if I can get through this, I can get through anything. So just got in there and did what I knew how to do, and it turned out okay, you know.
Absolutely. You're like, yeah, it turned out pretty good, right?
Oh, yeah, it definitely turned out good. I mean, here it is 30 years later, and we're doing this interview, so
Right.
I did something right somewhere.
That's absolutely right. So, rough beginnings, a little bit of a rough start, but you kept with it, like you said, all these years. So, tell us some of the places, like where did you all work for? Who all did you work for? What were some of your favorite promotions and promoters to work
I've worked for guys and don't even know who they were. They would call me and all this. I worked in Memphis, which was pretty well like a dream come true for a kid that knew nothing but Memphis wrestling. So I worked when Randy Hills was the booker there and all that stuff. Worked some of their big shows, worked the Louisville Gardens, worked at Evansville, worked in Memphis, worked in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Worked for Burt Prentice for several years. I've worked NWA territories all over the United States. Dutch took me to Puerto Rico to work for Carlos Colon, which was very interesting. Terrified, completely terrified the entire time. But it was fun. It was a good learning experience. It was something that I needed to do. Worked for WCW off and on for a couple of years, just as enhancement talent for them, which was fun. You working with guys that you see every week on TV, Ric Flair and all these guys. Awesome guys, treated me really well. The only state in the United States that I have not wrestled in is North Dakota. Other than that, I've wrestled in every state. Well, I haven't wrestled in Hawaii. I have to take that back. So 2 states in the United States. I've wrestled in Mexico, wrestled in Canada. Most of what I've done has been kind of the Midwest between Texas, Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, West Virginia, done a lot in Florida. So just a little bit everywhere.
Absolutely. Something tells me you're probably not missing too much in North Dakota.
No, I don't even know if there's ever been a wrestling show in North Dakota, to be honest.
I'm sure there has been, but like I'd be a little hesitant to go up there and be like, yeah, let's find some wrestling.
Right.
So I mean, yeah, that's actually pretty cool because, a lot of people, they're like, oh, yeah, I kind of stuck in this area, but you kind of branched out. You went a little bit of everywhere. So you obviously
Right.
you got to build a lot of good relationships, find a lot of good memories, do a lot of great matches, I'm sure. But what are some of your fondest memories of those days being in business?
Just the traveling and meeting all the different guys, seeing how, like, the different territories and the different companies, how the people there were different, You go into, like, WCW, for instance. You'd think, okay, this is Ted Turner's promotion. These guys are making hundreds upon hundreds of $1,000s a year. They're going to be stuck up. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. WCW was one of the easiest transitions that I had seen in the business. The guys there were all great. Everyone from Flair on down, with the exception of Hulk Hogan, who's a jackass. But like all the rest of the guys were just phenomenal. You come in and they made you feel like you were one of the boys and not just some jobber for them, The NWA territories, all really, really fun. Memphis, great. I think probably the funnest time that I ever had in the business was working for Tony Falk's All-Star Wrestling. I worked for Tony for probably 10 years, and Tony brought in a who's who of guys in the business. Also, when I worked for IWA South, which was Ian Rotten's hardcore company based out of Louisville, Kentucky, we did a lot of business with like the ECW guys and the old WWE guys, the old WCW guys. And it was really fun, it was hard work. We did a lot of bleeding, a lot of idiotic stuff now to look at it. You know, I mean, I broke my back twice working for Ian, broke my neck once working for Ian. And, oh yeah, I look back at it and think, wow, why did I do this? But at the time, it got my name out there. It made people know who I was, you know. But like I say, it's just really, it's hard to pinpoint specific times that were better than others, because I love the business so much that even now I still do occasional shows now, and it's just as fun now for me as it was my very first year in the business.
Absolutely. And that's a good way to know that you when you were in the business, you made the best of it, because you don't know what the best part is. It was all the best part.
Right. Everything is great, you know. So, like I say, it's just hard to pinpoint. That's like everyone asks, oh, well, who was your favorite match with? Well, when you have as many matches as I've had, it's hard to pinpoint down which match was the best, which was the worst, which one was the funnest, and all that. So it's hard to come up with those kind of answers.
Absolutely. That's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. But, I mean, like we said, we've kind of, we've gone through a couple of stages with your career. We kind of, saw how you started, got into training, your first match, some of the highlights that you kind of gave to us, breaking your neck with Ian Rod, and, all that fun stuff. But like you said, you still do occasional shows. But when was it that you kind of said, well, I'm not going to do this full time anymore? Was there like a moment where that kind of seemed like something that you needed to do? Or would you still consider yourself kind of in that realm of working more full time?
Yeah, I slowed down in 2007. Had a bad Harley wreck on my motorcycle, and they were going to amputate my left arm and my left leg. And that's March the 9th of 2007. And I threw a fit, told them they weren't amputating, to do whatever they had to do to fix them. So I've got a rod that goes from my knee to my ankle with 16 pins holding it in. I've got 11 pins holding my hand to my arm. And they told me that I would never walk right again, I would never run, and I would definitely never step back into a wrestling ring. And anybody that knows me knows that I'm extremely stubborn and hard-headed. And when someone tells me that I can't do something, that's when I put forth all the effort I can to do it, just to prove them wrong. So July the 14th of 2007, I went to Jacksonville, Florida for Coastal Wrestling and worked a 30-minute tag match where I was in the ring probably 20 minutes of it, just to prove to myself and prove to everyone that said I couldn't do it that I could. Now, granted, after the match, I sat in the dressing room and cried like a little girl because I was hurting so bad. But I did it. And then I decided to just kind of step away a little bit. And I went from working 4 and 5 nights a week to working like once a month, Then in 2012, I picked it back up where I was working just constantly on the road, traveling everywhere. And then in 2014, I kind of slowed it back down to just taking a booking here and there, more so for friends of mine in the business that would call me up and say, hey, Gator, we've got this show. We'd really like you to come down and work for us. And I'll go in. And they usually stick me in the ring with some of these newer guys that are breaking in simply because they need somebody that can work with them, have a good match with them, and show them the ups and downs, rights and wrongs, Yeah. So I do that a lot. Like I've got a show coming up here it's in April, I believe, April the 14th. It's going to be in Lafayette, Tennessee. And I know I'm going to be working with Sean Casey. Now, Sean Casey's been in the business as long as I have. So, I mean, it should be a good match. He's kind of a Midwest guy. I think he's based up around Ohio. He's traveled all over the world himself. So I'm looking forward to that. And then I know in June I'm supposed to be working with Brian Pillman's kid. Which I'm looking forward to simply because I knew Brian. I worked with Brian several times So I'm kind of looking forward to wrestling with this kid and, comparing him to his dad, I guess.
Absolutely. And Brian Pillman Jr. He's a friend of the show. We've had him on a couple times actually. He's a really cool guy. Seen him wrestle a couple times. He's pretty awesome. I gotta say. He's definitely he's got something. So I'll be excited to see you guys' match.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. Like I say.
Absolutely. So obviously you're still wrestling, which is fantastic. You proved them wrong. I mean, that definitely seems like. Just from our short conversation today, I kind of feel your kind of personality. So you do seem like the kind of person where they'd be like, "Hey, you're not gonna be able to walk her out." You'd be like, "Well, here's a middle finger. I'm gonna do it anyways."
Absolutely.
Which nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Powerful spirit. That's what you need in this kind of business. But what are you doing otherwise? What are you up to currently? What hobbies do you enjoy like outside of wrestling? Or what have you been doing in the meantime, if you will?
So, I do a lot of traveling. I've always loved traveling. I've been traveling abroad quite a bit here lately. Went to Cuba, went to Costa Rica, went to the Dominican Republic all last year. And of course, I have a normal 9-to-5 job, if you will. Then I don't know why. I really don't. A friend of mine got me addicted to Funko Pop collecting. So I've started collecting these Funko Pop figures, which is kind of weird for a 45-year-old man, but at least I'm not a brony. These guys that collect My Little things. But like these Funko Pop characters are kind of cool. I'm into like the horror ones and of course the wrestling ones and stuff like that. Actually working right now with a company to put out a Gator McAllistor pop figure. I've been doing some like behind the scenes type stuff with a couple of independent promotions here in Tennessee, trying to help them out, get rolling good. Other than that, just normal, sit on the beach and go fishing. Just the normal everyday kind of life.
Yeah, living the good life. Nothing wrong with collecting Pop Funkos. I do as well. So does Dave. Dave a little bit more than me, but hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
I like them.
Yeah, I collect the Batman ones and like old TV shows. They have some really cool for people who like Batman. They have old Adam West Batman pop figures. They're pretty cool. Pretty cool.
So my holy grail of my Funko collection is a Surf's Up Batman, which is based off of the original Batman movie with Adam West, and it's autographed by Adam West. Got the COA and everything with it. He signed it at a show before he passed away. So that's probably my holy grail. I've got it up on my fireplace and all that stuff. So
wow, that is fantastic. Does it have like the shark repellent?
I believe he's got it on his belt. I know he's holding a surfboard and he's got his swim trunks over the top of the bat suit, which was awesome.
Oh yeah.
I'm looking for the Joker. Still trying to find the Joker Surf's Up, but I can't find him. But I will.
Eventually, yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah, internet's a big area,
No, yeah, you'll find everything on the internet. Things you never knew you wanted, you'll find it on the internet.
Absolutely.
Oh wow! So, fun fact about Gator McAllistor: he is a Pop Funko connoisseur. But so, with all that taken in consideration, we live in which that is. Social media is rampant. Does Gator have any social medias that fans can follow?
Yeah, I've got Twitter. I believe my Twitter handle is just Gator McAllistor. I have Instagram. That is Gator MC72. I'm on Facebook under my real name. I'll leave that for y'all to try to figure out.
Right.
Trying to think what else I've got. I've got so many social media things, Snapchats and all this stuff. So I try to stay up to date with technology as much as I can. But
so you're doing better. So you're doing better than I am. I'm horrible. I have a Twitter and stuff, but I hardly tweet on it. Everyone is like, I got so much stuff to do. I don't have time to tweet. What are we doing here?
Yeah, I don't do a whole lot with the Twitter anymore. I stay more up to date with Instagram. I go to lots and lots of music festivals, so my Instagram's loaded with like where I'm meeting all of these rock and heavy metal bands and just different video clips of them, pictures, lots of stuff like that.
Very cool. I guess kind of a side tangent question. What's your favorite band?
My favorite all-time band is Motley Crue. I guess my favorite band right now is probably a tie between Slipknot and Stone Sour. I've met those guys and hung out with them. I really, really get into their music. Corey Taylor is just so genuine and nice when he's not on stage. He's just an everyday guy. Very humble, very appreciative of the fans. And that's what I look for. You get a lot of people that talk about wrestlers. And they wouldn't sign it for me. Well, you've lost a fan.
Yeah.
And it's the same way in the music industry. You've got these guys, take Jonathan Davis from Korn, for example. Dickhead. He truly is, and I'm sorry for using that language, but he will not sign autographs. He doesn't do anything for anybody, and it drives people away, where the rest of the guys in the band are really awesome, and it's like that with wrestling. I mean, yourself, if you go up to somebody and say, hey, can I get your autograph? And they just shoot you down, you don't know anything about them anymore, And that's the thing about Corey Taylor. He knows this. So, I mean, it's nothing for him to say, hey, come over here and sit down and talk to me. And, there's several people that I've met in the music industry like that. So it's just, I don't know. It makes me feel more confident in them to know that they're just like me in that case. Because, I mean, regardless, if I'm sitting at Burger King eating a Whopper and somebody comes up and wants an autograph, they're going to get it. I'll take pictures with them, whatever. It doesn't bother me.
Absolutely. And I think that's that's one of the beautiful things about the world we live in is that there are the good, there are the bad, but looking at the good it's really awesome because, like you said, I think I don't want to say that I have, but I've definitely seen stuff about Corey Taylor. I like Slipknot as well. Fun fact for the fans out there, and I have seen them in concert once. So, and they did a signing session. He's a really cool guy. I heard him talking to people, so I can attest to this as well. But absolutely, it's 100% a fact. They say you catch more flies with honey than vinegar, so that's 100% the truth.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right. Well, look, I want to thank you, Gator, for coming on to chat, giving me all these stories, talking about your pastimes with Funko Pop and the metal side of the world. They need to make some Slipknot Funko Pop figures. I'm not sure if they do that or not. That'd be cool.
I think they've been talking about it. I know they've got Motley Crue coming out and Alice Cooper coming out. They're supposed to be doing an Ozzy, another. I think they've already done one. I was supposed to do another. So maybe we'll get to see Slipknot soon. Of course, we know they did the Guns N' Roses and the Metallica. Okay. Motorhead they've done, or Lemmy they've done. So hopefully we'll see Slipknot soon. I mean, those would make great ones with their masks and everything.
That's what I'm saying. You can get pretty creative with those masks and put them on those little Funko Pops with big head. I mean, I think that would be awesome. But hey, if anybody from the Funko Pop, creative team is listening to this podcast, you have an idea, pitch it now.
Absolutely.
Well, again, thank you so much for coming on here. You guys know where to go follow him. You know where to check up on him, check his Instagram. That's where he's most active. But again, thank you for coming here. It's been an honor and a pleasure getting to talk to you and getting to know you. We'll probably have to catch up with you one day down the road. when you
definitely. We'll do this again sometime.
Yeah, when you get that Joker Surfs Up pop funk, I'll have to talk to you again.
Absolutely. I'll have to let you check that one out.
Right. All right. Well, we appreciate it, man. Take care. Be safe out there, and have fun with all your upcoming events. All right.
King of the ring, I'm the crusher. King of the ring, I'm the crusher. King of the ring, I'm the crusher. King of the ring.
All right, and welcome back to the Dave Dynasty Show. We are now joined by a special guest who is heading up a project very dear to the show's heart. On the line, we've got Chris Smith with the movement to get a statue erected in Milwaukee for the Crusher. Chris, how are we doing?
Good. Thank you for having me on your show.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about how this movement, this initiative, how it got started.
Well, I just live in the area of South Milwaukee, and when I think of South Milwaukee, I would always think of the Crusher and think that it was so cool that he lived here, was from here. His, wrestling personality, if you will, was like he was the guy that made Milwaukee famous. He was announced as the man that made Milwaukee famous. And then I realized that there wasn't really anything commemorating him at all. And then I realized that there's really nothing on the WWE network about him. And then I thought there needs to be something so people will remember him, and then just kind of came up with the idea for a statue. In Milwaukee, we have a statue of Arthur Fonzarelli from Happy Days, which was set in Milwaukee, and it seems to be pretty popular, even though it was a little controversial when it first was being created. But I figured if we could have Fonzie, who wasn't even a real person, we certainly can have the Crusher, who was actually, a real person and a symbol of Milwaukee.
That's right. That's that's one of the bad perks with company like WWE controlling all these video libraries is they get to kind of write the history and put the spotlight on what they want, and oftentimes a lot of guys are overlooked, and especially a guy like the Crusher. I mean, we're not talking a minor player here. I mean, the Crusher was huge. I mean, especially like in the AWA in the Midwest. I mean, he was Hulk Hogan before Hulk Hogan was. He was huge.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. I mean, if you watch his matches and his promos, I put the Crusher in top 5 of all time with the full, the charisma and just the total package. And I don't know what the reason is. I'm assuming that when the WWE, purchased the AWA library, maybe they just didn't have, the digital files of going back that far. They do have an AWA library, but it just doesn't go back far enough to really see the Crusher and Dick the Bruiser, and there's not a lot of Baron von Raschke or any of that. Yeah. And I just, for kids that are young, the younger generation, I just thought, how will they know who this was? Because, like you said, he was a huge deal.
That's right. Yeah. And that's not even a negotiable fact. I mean, there's even numbers to back up when Vern Gagne brought in Crusher, the attendance went up, the gate went up. I mean, there are correlations that prove how big a draw, how much, because that's what a lot of guys think. Oh, did he make money? Of course he made money. He was huge. And correct me if I'm wrong. He also has a military history, doesn't he? I mean, of serving the country. Is that right?
He's a World War II veteran.
Yeah,
he's a World War II vet.
Yeah, so on top of his professional life, I mean, there's that side of it too, it's definitely a cause that my full support's behind. I'm all about preserving wrestling history, especially some of it that kind of slips through the fingers. And as you said, each generation where there's not that exposure, it's lost. Because the weird thing about wrestling is we don't have, there isn't, like you said, a lot of videos not there. There's not a lot of stuff, and because of the kayfabe and the protection in the past, a lot of what we have is just word of mouth, and those guys are leaving us, one by one. So it's a great thing. It's you're stepping up to help preserve and put a spotlight on Crusher. So when So you were born and raised in Milwaukee? You're from that area?
Yeah, I'm from that area, and you know, in especially the city of South Milwaukee, which is a suburb to the south. I don't know if I'd really call it a suburb. It's a municipality to the south of the city of Milwaukee, and you know, that's where Crusher lived. He played on the football team. He raised his family there. He stayed there his entire life in the same home. Everyone in this area, you know, it seems when you talk to them, you know, the older generation, like my parents' generation, has a story about him because he, you know, stayed in the community, and you know, all interactions that I've ever heard are positive. People would knock on his door at all hours of the day and night, and he would open it. He never turned down an autograph. He never turned down a charity event that he was asked to participate in. So it goes beyond the fact that he was just an extremely successful and famous wrestler. It even goes beyond the fact that he was a military veteran. He was just a really good human being.
Right. Yeah, and that's another kind of a pitfall of professional wrestling. Sometimes the only stories we hear are the bad ones, of the guys that made mistakes and did, you know, these bad things, and that's sometimes gets too much attention, and we forget about those guys that you know, put a positive light on the business. So if someone is looking to get, because you have a GoFundMe out there, right?
Correct.
How can someone? What's the easiest way for someone to look that up or to get to that page if they would want to make a donation and support the cause?
The easiest way is to go to dacrusher.org. That's dacrusher.org. And then there's a big link there that says donate. And, you know, we're taking donations. We're pretty much all the way there as far as the money we need for the statue. So this thing is happening. We're continuing to accept donations because the next step is, you know, next spring or early summer when this thing gets unveiled. I envision it being making it a major event, probably with some live wrestling involved. And my hope is that celebration becomes the first annual Crusher Fest, and it's something that we can do every year.
Yeah, that would be great. And I know you had an event here with this past weekend. You were saying it was, you know, successful, everything was good, and I know we've talked. You had some shirts at that event, and you're looking to get some more in stock and make those available online, correct? So if they watch,
yes, in fact, as of today, I can announce on your show for the first time that I've announced anywhere, and I'll be putting it on our Facebook page shortly, is we've been approved to have a store at ProWrestlingTees.com.
Oh, that is great.
And all of our designs that people have been buying at our events are going to be available on there. They say it could take 1 to 2 weeks for them to have everything ready to start taking orders, but that is something that is coming.
Yep, that's great, because that's obviously a very convenient way to do it. That the print on demand, where there's no stock,
right?
Always always the size you need there. So it's very convenient to keep that on. And then, like you said, that can be an ongoing thing into the future to help support, you know, future events and future things honoring. It can be an ongoing source of income there for those type things. So
absolutely,
you heard it here. Go. We were trying to get the word out. We've shared the links. We're trying to get as much exposure as we can. Like we said, when you go to the GoFundMe, even if it's close to hitting that goal, keep contributing, because like Chris said, there's plans and hopes for doing future events, and that will need our support as well. So once again, Chris, one last time, give them that website. It was
www.dacrusher.org.
Dacrusher.org.
And before you let me go, I will just say that we did have an event last Friday, and we brought in some old AWA guys to tell Crusher stories, and we had Jumpin' Jim Brunzell, Ken Patera, the capable Kenny J, and Baron von Raschke came into town. And it was quite an event, and you can see the video. We live streamed most of it, and that's on our Facebook page, the Crusher Statue, if you want to check that out. It was a night to be remembered.
Very cool. We will have the link to the website in the show notes. So whatever you're listening to this on, just look at the show notes. There'll be an easy to click on link to get you there. And I'll make sure I go on and I will share those videos on all of our pages so that people that follow our stuff can happen upon your page. So go like their Facebook page. There's also, I believe, a Twitter. Go follow the Twitter, and then visit the website.
Crusher statue.
Yep, and support, make your donations, make plans, open your calendars up, because hopefully next year this thing will be unveiled, and let's get everybody out there and support and recognize the Crusher and honor him and his contributions. Chris, thank you for joining us. Thank you for doing this for Midwest Professional Wrestling and preserving its history, particularly of the Crusher. We appreciate what you're doing for him and for the business.
Well, thank you so much for having me on your show and spreading the word.
And welcome back to the Dave Dynasty Show. This is Dave Dynasty, wrapping it up here on this, we'll call it the return episode, right? As LL Cool J said, don't call it a comeback. We had to take a couple weeks off. We apologize for that again. We hope you enjoyed this show with the classic Scott Steiner audio, the interview with Jayson Maples, official decision with referee Manbun, whatever happened to with Gator McAllistor, and of course, discussing the Crusher statue with Chris Smith. Continue to fight the good fight out there, folks. Continue to support Midwest Pro Wrestling wherever you are. Get to an independent show this weekend and support the guys, gals, promotions, etc. in your area. Feel free to contact us any way you want. Tag us in anything you want. Let us know what you're doing out there within the world of the Midwest Express. Tell us how you're representing. You can visit DaveDynasty.com to find all of our social media links to Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, etc., etc. You can also find all the podcast episodes there, links to some of our favorite promotions, and links to our Amazon.com and HighSpots.com affiliate programs, no additional charge to you, but we get a little kickback. So if you're going to shop on Amazon or HighSpots, use those links. There's also a link there for Pro Wrestling Tees where you can buy our shirts. And as you heard from Chris Smith, coming up soon on Pro Wrestling Tees, Duck Crusher shirts to support Duck Crusher statue. Make sure you get one of those. Make sure you continue to support that cause. Very, very worthwhile. Very, very needed. Something I'm very passionate about and very happy to help spread the word of support. And also, while you're out there, make sure you share, like, comment, follow, etc., wherever you catch us. And if you would like to make financial contributions, you can do so at paypal.me/TheDaveDynasty for a one-time contribution. Or to make ongoing monthly contributions, go to patreon.com/TheDaveDynasty. We appreciate that. That money goes to stuff like what we've just experienced, replacing a laptop, replacing a microphone, which I apologize that the audio is not quite up to perfect standards yet. We're still tinkering. I'm still trying to learn some of this new equipment. We got a lot of new stuff that I'm toying with, I'm tinkering with. Bear with us. Hopefully the audio will continue to improve in the coming weeks as I get more familiar with this and I continue to play around with it. So that's it. Until next week, I am Dave Dynasty. This is the Dave Dynasty Show. As you are out there in the Midwest Express supporting the cause, be good, be safe, and keep on growing.